Perfect. To those that do not want to contribute to our discussion, or I'm so sorry, to those that do want to contribute to our discussion, I ask that you do so in a respectful way. We want to hear from everyone that wants to share tonight, so everyone has an equal chance to speak and an expectation to be heard. So please keep your questions or comments brief so that we can get to as many as possible in the limited amount of time we have here tonight. And if you've already been called on, please give others a chance to speak before taking another turn. Please remember that this meeting is just one part of the larger discussion we're having about the park. The conversations that you have with your neighbors outside of these scheduled meetings are just as important to building on the shared vision for the park as the one that we'll be having here tonight. So if you want to discuss anything in more detail with me, my contact info is there at the bottom of the slide. That's max.cell@boston.gov. Pretty easy. Could you go to the next slide, please, Karina? Right. And so during tonight's discussion, we ask that you use the raise hand feature so that we can give you proper time to give you the right speaking permissions. And again, if you have thoughts during the meeting, feel free to add them to the chat. We'll just be using that raise hand feature during kind of the more free-flowing discussion portion. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a quick look at what to expect from us tonight. I'm going to give a very brief introduction to the project design team and an overview of the project before handing it over to them for the rest of the presentation. Afterward, we'll hold our discussion section where you'll have a chance to share your thoughts or ask questions about the project. And we'll finish the night with info on the forthcoming survey and our next meeting. Next slide, please. Great. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm Max Sell, project manager at Boston Parks and Rec, working on Jefferson Playground. With me tonight from the city is Shanna Dixon, our moderator. Michael McMillan couldn't be with us here tonight. Typically, we also have Caroline Peters, our neighborhood liaison for Jamaica Plain. And presenting tonight from Arcadis, we have Uma Sakar, a senior associate. And completing the design team, we have Kathy Offenberg, the principal, and Karina Lanfear, a design associate. Next slide, please. So I just want to give a pause here for a second and allow any elected officials who may be on the call to come off mute, or anyone representing the office. Okay, it doesn't seem like we have anyone here representing, so I'll just ask that we go to the next slide, please. So as you probably already know, we held our first meeting at the end of October and had produced a survey to gather feedback in order to get a sense of kind of what neighbors needed at the park. After that presentation, we'll post another survey kind of asking what comes next. This next meeting that we're on, again, we'll be discussing kind of conceptual alternatives. And in the spring, we'll be moving forward trying to refine something into a final concept. Next slide, please. So this slide may look familiar to anyone who's been on a City of Boston Parks call before. It's a graphic summary of kind of the general categories that we consider when making improvements to a park. So safety and regulatory guidelines are followed by law. For parks projects, that mostly means things associated with ADA regulations, playground safety, those sorts of things. The city of Boston also has its own list of priorities that they've listed in the Imagine Boston 2030 plan. Those include investing in open space, promoting a healthy environment, and improving the quality of life for its residents. So on behalf of my friends in the planning department, I would encourage you to check that out. And another component here is the community input, which is why we're happy to have you here tonight. Again, just want to reiterate that this meeting is just one part of the community input that we're asking you for, and the conversation is an ongoing one. So it's much larger than the presentation. With that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Uma here on our next slide about starting with site analysis. So Uma, you have our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Happy New Year, everyone. Kathy, Karina, and I have been working on this project for the past few months now, and we're very excited to be at this stage, you know, starting to share some concepts with all of you. I know we last met almost 3 months ago, and at that time we presented the site analysis part of the project. You might be familiar with this plan we shared with you last time. This one just shows what's existing currently in the Jefferson playground, and we divided up into the parts. You have the baseball field, the batting cage, the basketball court, the entry plaza, and the play area. So the area defined by the dashed red line is our site. This is the part of Jefferson Playground that we are going to be looking at for this meeting and for the next one to come. So bordered by the Hannigan School on one side, the U.S. Veterans Affairs Admin Building on the other, and finally to the south is the Naira Rock Urban Wild. We'll go quickly through this one and the next one, which is the site analysis circulation diagram now. Again, familiar to those of you who attended the last site analysis meeting. What this one shows is how people are moving around the site or how they get there. You have in green, solid green, the sidewalk that's along Grotto Glen Road. And then from that sidewalk getting into the playground is the line that you see with the solid blue, which takes you, you come in and you can either go right into the Jefferson Playground or you can go left into Naira Rock Urban Wild. There's also an existing unpaved path to the, and maybe Karina, I don't know if it's easy for you to just point it with the mouse. Yeah, thank you. There's a dash shown by the dashed blue line, which we learned at the last community meeting is pretty important to the community, and it's a well-used path that is currently unpaved. It's just dirt path from connecting basically from Heath Street down to Grotto Glen Road. So that is the circulation. So if we have no questions with those, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is a summary of the feedback that we got from the site analysis meeting, as well as the online survey that Max referred to, the Pulse survey. Generally, we had, I think, a lot of feedback from the community, and we look at both the overall comments that we received as well as to each of the specific areas, right? Overall, we got the input that the park kind of feels disconnected, that there are all these various bits and pieces, but it doesn't feel like a whole. It suffers from littering. There was a general expression for a desire for a soccer field, a desire for public restrooms, and paved walking paths. And by paved walking paths, I'm specifically referring to the one that we just saw as the dashed blue line. And now if you look back at the little inset plan on the upper right corner, the yellow is the entry plaza, the pink, the playground, the blue is the basketball court, and the green big circle is the ball field and the batting cage. So the entry plaza, the input we got was it was uninviting, there was no seating, insufficient signage, it needed an accessible entry from Heath Street. Currently, the slopes are not quite accessible. And at the same time, of course, we need to maintain access to Naira Rock. Ball field and batting cage, well used. I mean, it was really heartwarming to see how well used the ball field is and how important it is to this community. But it does suffer from drainage issues, it floods, and so on. And then there was other field programming as well, and the input came that we need to study current usage, and we did study the current usage, and we'll show that to you in a following slide. There was a request to double the bleacher capacity, improve sight lines, permanent storage locker, lighting upgrades, water fountains, and then the topic came up that sometimes this area was used as a dog park, which is not desirable, and maintain a paved path from Heath Street. The basketball court we learned was mainly used for informal play. It lacks adequate seating, and that the outreach to Native American Association are the user groups. And this outreach we have just started. Um, and then the playground. I think it was the general consensus was that the existing play structure is not adequate, and it should need, and it currently does not serve the needs of different age groups, and which we need to improve on. An overall fence was not desired, and but at the same time, there needs to be a way to contain the youngest children. So, based upon all the feedback that we received at the meeting and from the survey, we have gone ahead and developed a couple of concept plans. I just want to remind that these are really concept plans. They're big picture, right? You may not see everything that is listed here. You may not see, for example, more seating. Although that was asked for, you may not see the permanent storage locker, because we are right now just focusing on the big picture. And those things are very much at the background for us, the back of our minds. But right now we'll focus on the big picture. And once we kind of hone in onto one concept plan in the next community meeting, you'll start seeing more of these details developed. Okay. So with that, if we go to the next slide. So Max provided us with the permitting records for 2025. And as you can see, over, I would say about almost 3/4, maybe 70% of the permits for youth baseball, a few of them about 20% for adult athletics, and then a whole, you could see some permits were for youth softball and kickball and cricket and some special events and so on. So the majority of the use appears to be for youth baseball and then for adult athletics. Moving on. Okay, so before we will move on to the site concepts, but we start off with some background information on that we have since obtained after the last community meeting that kind of helped us form the framework for the concepts that we will be presenting. So the first one, at the time of the last presentation, we had, if you may recall, we were presenting everything on an aerial map. We have since got a survey done, so we have much more accurate information. And so one of the first things we studied was what athletic facilities are provided, what is their size compared to the regulation size, so that we have some basis to work with. So we'll start with the basketball court. The basketball court is a standard NBA, NCAA court as it exists now. The court size itself is a standard size, but the clearances around it are a little bit smaller than what is desired. But the court itself is a regulation size. The batting cage is also a standard batting cage. It's about 70 feet by 18 feet. That is a typical batting cage. As far as the baseball field goes, the distance from the home plate to the fence at center field, the foul lines is, as you can see, around 250 to 275 feet. There is a light pole that currently encroaches. Karina, can you point that out? Right there. So, that is within the baseball field, as we understand. And where does this size compare? So we go to the next slide. So our field is right there, existing field. It's kind of in between a Little League and a Bronco. And all our assumption is that we will maintain the current dimension of the field. Obviously, we can't make it any larger. So we are going to keep it the same size as we look at the two concepts. Okay, all right. The next thing we studied was soccer field. I know there was some interest expressed about having a soccer field. So a typical U10 soccer field is about 105 feet to 135 feet by 165 to 195 feet. So the field that we are showing in each of these colored rectangles is the smallest size for a U10 soccer field. So it's 105 feet by 165 feet. And we're showing with the green outline a 10-foot clearance on all sides. So we looked at about 4 different orientations of this soccer field to see what would be kind of best in terms of, the overlap with the infield, the solar orientation, and the distance from the school. As you can see, number two, I would say, has the maximum overlap with the infield, and number 4 has the least. Number 3 is not much more than number 4. And number 4 would be 2, you'd have the walking path would kind of encroach on it. Solar orientation, typically, if you see on page right, all the way to the bottom, you see the north arrow. The best solar orientation for a soccer field, for a play field here, would be north-south. That's because the sun is high up in the sky in the north and south and lower in the sky in the east and west, which means if the more a field is oriented east-west, the glare from the sun is more likely to hit the player's eyes. So we prefer a north-south. So based upon all these points, it appears that orientation number 3 would be the best orientation for the soccer field on this site. And that is what we'll be showing in the 2 options to follow. We still haven't, now when I say that this is a soccer field layout option, we're not saying that there's going to be permanent markings on the field. For now, that decision has not been made. Maybe the corners will be marked. We don't know as yet, but this is just, as an example, this is an orientation. The number 3 orientation is what would be a preferred orientation. So that's what you'll be seeing. Okay, should we move on? All right, so we have 2 basic concepts, and the first one is called retain. And the reason it's called retain is because the baseball field kind of stays in the same location as it is currently. So that has not moved. So what you're seeing in the green, I'll just go through the legend. The green is the baseball field, right? The yellow is the batting cage, and the blue is the basketball court. So these 3 essentially stay in the same location as they are right now. The blue line going to the page bottom of the site is the existing fence line. So that has the backstop and so on and so forth. All of those remain in the current location. Any repairs that need to be made to the fence line will, of course, take place. So we saw that there were places where maybe the fabric has been damaged, that will be repaired. So things that need to get done in terms of maybe any structural repairs that need to be done to the backstop will all take place. But essentially, that part of the site remains in its current location and configuration. The baseball field upgrades will be made in terms of, especially we heard a lot about, there's flooding and so on. So it will be regraded and drainage will be improved in that area to prevent future flooding. One of the things we heard about in the bleachers was that the sight lines are not good. Excuse me. So we are proposing new bleachers and possibly seeing how they can be elevated so that the sight lines would be better. So there are the issues that were connected, unconnected to drainage with the current layout of the baseball field. For example, the sight lines um, are hidden because of the street trees. So that issue would still remain with the current, with this option, option one. Um, but the other things such as drainage and seating and so on will be improved. The batting cage will also be upgraded. We'll have a new interior, new fencing, and so on. And the basketball courts, again, it will be refinished, and the hoops will be replaced, and the lights will also be replaced. We are calling for the light that is currently within the footprint of the baseball field. Yep, that one to be relocated. So we have also, with this configuration of lights, a little more uniform lighting of the baseball field than there is right now. To the north and west of the baseball field, you'll see the purple, yep, which is the new play area. And if you see, maybe Karina, you can just, the current play area footprint is pretty small. It's that little circle with that one singular play equipment that exists now. And we are calling for an expanded play area and possibly see if we can subdivide that area to accommodate different age groups. So 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 12. So those kind of, an expanded play area, and not just an expanded play area with play equipment, but possibly engage the slope. And what you see as the lighter green is a natural play area. And once we finish talking about these concepts, we have some more imagery to present for the play area themselves. So we'll share that once we've talked about the concepts. The separation between the basketball court and the play area in this scheme is new vegetation. So it will be kind of a green barrier between the two basketball courts and the play area. To the to the west of the basketball court, you'll see a pink kind of, yes, which is courtside seating. One of the things we heard about in the basketball court was that it wasn't getting enough exposure, that some people didn't even know it existed, or it wasn't getting as much use. And we do think that providing amenities such as courtside seating would really help to kind of, popularize it and make it into more than what it currently is. This courtside seating in this option is on the west side of the basketball court, so that the viewers or the spectators will face east. So this, which in a way it's better for afternoon games, right? So they're not looking into the sun. So if the court happens to be used more often for games in the afternoon, this seating on the west side works better. Okay. I have to say that I forgot to say that we'll talk about this concept and the next concept, and then we will have a slide with both the concepts on a singular sheet so we can, look at them and compare and contrast at the same time. Okay. Is there anything I've missed, Karina or Kathy, that you'd like to add? Or did I? Oh, I'm sorry. I did miss out one thing. So let's talk about the paths. So the dashed black lines are the existing paths which are to remain. And we've heard over and over again that the park feels disconnected, that it doesn't feel like a singular park. And there was also the interest expressed for having a walk. So what you're seeing in the bold black line is that the path that connects from Heath Street down to Grotto Glen Road is proposed as a new paved path all the way down to the sidewalk, because currently I think it comes to the fence and then kind of is still a dirt path. So it would connect to the sidewalk, and it's also connecting all the way around the baseball field back to the existing walk, so that there is a continuous loop walk that goes all around the site, connecting the different parts of the site and allowing you to experience the park as a whole. So that is one of the concepts of this option. Okay. So, and if I've missed anything, yes, the entry plaza. I should have started with that, but anyway, the entry plaza all the way to the bottom at Grotto Glen Road. Karina, can you point that out? Would be an expanded entry plaza so that it would have the amenities that are lacking currently in this as it exists right now. Okay. Should we go on to the next one? Are there any? I'm sorry, I'm not able to see the chat, so I don't know if there are any urgent messages, but we can go to the next one. Okay, so the first one was called retain, and the second one is called rotate. And what this one does is, as I mentioned, the previous option does not resolve the issue of the sight lines, the street trees blocking the sight lines for the ball field. So this plan rotates the ball field slightly towards north. It's not a very significant, like a major one, but as you can see, just a slight rotation of this ball field helps you avoid the trees, the street trees along Grotto Glen Road. Right? So what does this mean? Again, as I said, the baseball field is not only rotated, we will be regrading and improving the drainage as well. But what are the other impacts that this rotation has on the concept, on the design? Obviously, we can no longer use all of the existing fence, right? In the previous concept, we were able to make just upgrades to the existing fence, but here you can see that the blue line, can you see the blue line? Could you point that out? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes. So the existing fence line is that, the blue line, which stays, but then we have to go to the fuchsia or the pink new fence line. So this means that we need a lot more new fencing, a new backstop, all that is new. So a lot more resources now come into the allocation of resources come into the baseball fields improvement, because it needs all new fencing. And then, as you can see, the slight rotation now starts having kind of goes through the batting cage, which means that the batting cage will need to be relocated. It can't stay in its existing location. So what you'll see at the top, the yellow bar, is the new batting cage. So it'll be a brand new batting cage, different location from what is existing in the outfield, prompted by the rotation of the baseball field. We've also extended the basketball court, remains the same location. It's been refinished and the lights are replaced and the hoops are replaced, similar to the previous concept. But in this case, we've extended that new fence since we're putting all this new fence in. And now you have a fence separation between the basketball court and the playground. So in this scheme, by rotating it, that's the major aspect. What we're also doing is kind of fencing off the more active, the more sport or athletic parts of the site from the playground area of the site. So that I think is also a major difference between the two concepts. Going on to slightly more detailed explanation, in here you'll see that the bleacher seating, we had the tiered bleacher seating in the previous concept, and here we're thinking of it as having a more of a linear bleacher seating. We'd still have to work with improving the sight lines, which means it will still need to be elevated some so that you can have clear views. But then this is kind of longer and you can have more capacity for the bleacher seating on either side. Because of this rotation, if you know right behind kind of the basketball court, you have this ledge outcrop. It becomes too tight to have a connecting walk. So that may or may not be possible. We still have to study it, but this concept does not show that connecting walk that we talked about in the previous concept. So while we have a walk that connects this, we'll still be paving that walk that connects from Heath Street down to Grotto Glen Road. That would still be a paved path. And then an offshoot from that connects to the batting cage, but there is no connecting loop all around the park, right? So that's another major difference between the two concepts. We still have a play area. We're showing it as slightly reduced in scope. We still would like to, have, 3 different play areas for the 3 different age groups connected, but separate, 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 12. We still want to have a natural play area, but the understanding is that, with the resources, we need to get a better understanding from all of you of what is important to the community, So obviously, if we spend a lot of resources on one thing, we have to reduce resources that we can spend on something else. So, but this does not mean that we will not have a playground. Obviously, we still have a playground. We still have a natural play area because we understand that's important to the community. And of course, an improved entry plaza area as well. So the things that remain the same in both concepts are upgrades to the lights, upgrades to the basketball court, upgrades to the entry plaza. Another difference in this scheme is where the courtside seating is. Has much for the basketball court. This has a reduced footprint of the courtside seating. The courtside seating faces west in this case. So you probably don't want to be sitting there in the afternoon and watching the game because the sun will be low in the sky. So this is kind of more suitable for watching a game that's held in the morning. Okay. Anything else? I think we can. Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you, Karina. We're also proposing kind of a loop walk here because we're not providing the larger loop, around the entire site. We do have a loop walk here around around the play area that would be more in the spirit of the trail that currently connects to the Naira Wild, Urban Wild. Okay, so maybe we can just look at the next slide, which has both the concepts on one sheet. And we can look at the 2 concepts together, and we'll also be bringing this slide up towards the end of our presentation so that people can have, time to talk and discuss it and have them both on the same slide while you give us your feedback. So again, let's just go through the 2 concepts. So the first one is retain, concept 1, retain, concept 2, rotate. So the first one keeps the existing orientation and location of the baseball field. There are minimal repairs to the field fence. Just some repairs, especially to the backstop area. Keeps the current location of the batting cage with improvements. Improved bleacher style seating. There's a planting separation between basketball court and the playground. Seating to the west of the basketball court, which is better orientation for afternoon games, and a loop walk around the site. Concept 2, rotate rotates the baseball field so that trees no longer interfere with sight lines or with play. The backstop and a whole section of the fence is replaced. The batting cage is relocated, new cage in the outfield, expanded unobstructed linear bench seating, fence separation between basketball court and playground, seating to east of basketball court, better orientation for morning games, and no loop walk around the site. Okay. Do we pause here, Max, or should we have all discussion towards the end?
I think we'll just hold the discussion for the end. Anything that's in the chat we'll address during the discussion. Thanks.
Okay, cool. All righty. Okay. So then we go to a little bit about the landscape concept in terms of the character of the site, right? And the site history. So if we look at the larger landscape of this area, we find, and we look at the bedrock geology, which is very interesting. The rock here is something called Roxbury conglomerate. And most of this area is that. In fact, the word Roxbury is derived from rock, and a very specific kind of rock. So if you go to the next slide, what is Roxbury conglomerate? It's, of course, the pudding stone that is there on the site, and also at Nairo Rock. And you see it in the outcropping that is to the north of the basketball court. You see there are certain areas of exposed ledge, even on site. And then you see it at Nairo Rock. And it's called pudding stone because, people thought that it looked like Christmas pudding at the time. So and of course, I don't know how many people know, but this pudding stone is actually the state rock of Massachusetts. So we think that this is a very special site in a way. We are excited about the history and the geology behind the site. And we would like to capture that and kind of bring that into our design. So on the next slide, Allison, and I think I saw her in this in the group here, was kind enough to send us this photograph after the last community meeting. It comes from the records of the Mass Historical Society digital collection. So this area, and especially the Nairo Rock area, was a pudding stone quarry from the time of the Great Depression. And actually Naira, which I learned, stands for the National Industrial Recovery Act. So there is a significant history in this area. And as I said, we are very excited to explore that history. And we are looking at ways of how we can express it on this site. And one of the areas that we can express it in, if you go to the next slide, is in the play areas, right? And we are very interested, and we would very much like to, this is an example of a project that we did elsewhere, is to find ways to bring the site character and nature in general into the play area so that it feels like this site, you can tell the story of the site as you walk into the site, right? I know Nairo Rock is there, but it's kind of out of the way a little bit. So we'd really like this Jefferson playground to kind of tell the story of this area. And on the next slide, please, Karina. How could we do that? As I said, we can encourage safe exploration of natural areas where there is exposed ledge we'd like to see how we can incorporate that exposed sledge into the play areas, bring it in. Um, we'd like to see how we can have play equipment that kind of shows what is the native flora, fauna in a nice, playful, attractive way. There is, on the site, we show the purple, if you remember, as the play equipment area, but we also have a natural play area shown in the lime green. And that is actually nestled within a slope. So we'd look at how we can engage that slope along it should say west, sorry, along the west with the play equipment. So these are some of the things that we are thinking about. How can we tell the story of the site? How can we bring what would have been the prehistoric nature here? How we can bring that into the site, and so on. The next slide, please. So, talking more about the play area, and this is where we like community input as well, is we had talked earlier on at the last site meeting about how, and we got the input as well, that it was important to cater to, unlike the current play equipment, which only caters to one particular age group, we do want to have equipment that caters to a wide variety of age groups, of 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 12, and each age group of children, they have their needs are different, and therefore the amenities that we provide for them are typically different. So 0 to 2 is really the age of imagination, where they're starting to explore the world a little bit at a time. They're learning these new movements. They're beginning to make friends. They're starting to notice that other people actually exist, and they can solve tiny little problems, right? So the typical amenities that we provide are like infant swings and slides, catering to pretend play, crawling, rolling, even things like textural changes and small interactions. So that's typically the focus for this age group. Then you go to the next age group, where children become more willing to explore, and they develop gross and fine motor skills, and they start to discover the world around them. They start to discover how to use their bodies in different ways, and how to communicate with peers, and take turns and share. And typical amenities, now we start looking at a greater range of motion: spinning, climbing, sliding, skipping, and swinging. Start exploring things about balance and coordination, and things that allow for a little bit more challenging and allow for both individual and small group play. As the child grows older, 5 to 12 years old, they're of course they start developing individual styles and skills. So that this means our play equipment needs to cater to a wider range of activity, and they learn problem solving and emotional and social competence. And so you'll typically find that there's more than one activity accommodated by a singular piece of equipment. So it's not, while a 0 to 2 year old is satisfied doing the same activity over and over and over again, the 5 to 12 year old gets bored more easily. So we have to provide challenges at different levels and encourage hand-eye coordination and whole body movement. So this is some of the things that we work with as we look at play equipment and start seeing what works, what does not work. Moving on to the next slide. So this is some of the precedent imagery, and I think Max may have mentioned that there is a survey that will be up, and all of these images as well as this presentation will be up. So even if you're not able to provide your feedback today, you can do so at a later date, or if you think of something later on. I just want to caution you that this equipment, we have not as yet selected any equipment. So this is just imagery, and the reason we present this is to get people's juices going. So it is just for uh, suggestions about things. We are not talking about specific equipment. We're not talking about finishes. We're not talking about materials. Just about things that you think to sparks, discussion. So, for example, we talk about imaginative play, or crawling, or multi-generation play. Um, and at all times, especially in the 0 to 2 age group, we think it's important to kind of include the caregiver into the play experience. Slides and platforms, swings, multi activity. And this is especially true, as I said, for the older age groups. We want to see things that are more, different activities that are combined. Balance, climbing. Again, you can see that there is currently a climbing structure. This is a little more contemporary climbing structure, and we think that's still a useful thing to have. Spinning. So these are just different activities that are possible within the range, and if there's something that you think is really important, would be valuable, or maybe something that we've missed here, do feel free to give us your comments on that. And I think, do we move on? Okay. All right. So we have a little more than half an hour left, I think, which is good. Open to listening and discussion. And if there is any slide that you think that you would like to go back to and take another look at, we can do that as well. But I think if you move on, Karina, we have the two comparisons. Yes. So I think this would be a good place to start the discussion. Max, would you like to lead it? I can't hear
Sure thing.
him.
Sorry about that.
Oh,
Just
okay.
coming off,
Yeah.
just coming off video there. Yeah, so thank you again for that presentation, Uma. You all heard a lot of things tonight. Um, I think for the time being, we just kind of want to open up the floor and get some kind of initial reactions. I'll be able to kind of see you raise a hand and give you permissions to speak. So if anyone would like to, please feel free to do that. I see a hand up now. It is from Kenneth. Can I ask you to unmute, Kenneth?
I
Let's
can't
see.
hear Kenneth.
I'm not able to hear you, Kenneth. Maybe let's see. I do see there are kind of a number of Kenneth instances. I'm not sure if we're having an audio issue here, Kenneth. Let's see if I click to ask to unmute you.
There you go.
Huh. Kenneth, I'm still not able to hear you. I'm going to just allow someone else to get a chance in, and we'll try and come back to you, okay? Thank you. Let's see, Louisa, you have your hand up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for all this work and the presentation and your interest. We really appreciate it. Thank you. So I don't know much about baseball, so I probably don't have a lot of input on that sense, except for maybe on a second concept, the batting cages against the building, on a further field may not work if the balls go that far. They can hit someone. I don't know. So I'm gonna leave it to the expert. Just that's my thought on that. But the things that I thought about, I think it's probably, I don't know, for what we can see, my preference would be probably the retain. But here are some things that I thought about as you were talking about permits, for example. Okay, so is there a sign there, or are you planning on putting a sign on how to get a permit? I would have not known how to go about getting a permit to do anything there. So maybe if you can add that thing too. And you talked about a lot of updates, which is extremely well received. You have not talked about, and maybe you will talk about in the future, so I'm just bringing it up, the upkeep of this facility, because one of the problems that we have had in this area, in this neighborhood, is that things aren't being let go. So who will be responsible for upkeeping, making sure that the nets in the basketball, it's well, it's not broken or whatever else is needed. And thank you for thinking even about the solar rotation. I really appreciate that deeper thought. The other thought that I had is, have you had any conversation at all with the school next door? So parents or educators, or even, I know BCYF does not have a manager yet. Had it for about 3 months and then they moved them. So, but I think maybe it would be a good idea to have some ideas, some conversation with that, and maybe you already had with some other people there. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. I just want to address this because I have heard this question raised not only in the previous meeting but in emails as well. I have heard from a lot of you about the light and kind of the lighting situation between that tunnel area that is kind of the entrance to that path along the northeast side of the park. That is
Mhm.
something we plan on engaging the school with, but haven't done so already. We're still kind of at that conceptual phase, and we'll be working more closely with them kind of as we progress kind of into the more schematic phase and start to come up with more of a clear design vision.
Sure.
Um, let's see, I want to make sure I managed to answer all of your questions. So excuse me if I miss anything. I do know that I think the one of the major issues on upkeep, especially in terms of the field, has to do with drainage. And so that's kind of one of the big things we're exploring. We're going to be doing some geotechnical testing here to kind of get a sense of what the ground composition is in order to kind of assuage that puddling. Anyone who's played ball out there kind of knows those puddles end up being there for days at a time after a rain event. So that's one way we're hoping of kind of extending playtime at this field in general. I know you had asked about permitting. That is something that is slightly out of my realm of expertise. We do have a permitting department that is more to do with recreation. I have also heard, and we have thought about kind of introducing a community bulletin board or making that permitting process somehow more transparent to the people who live there or are living in the neighborhood and want to use that, right? We do know kind of one of the things that we need to balance with a field that involves permits is you get, you know, teams and groups coming from around different parts of the city. I know the Jamaica Plain Reagan Youth League uses this field quite a bit. So there is that kind of like balance we want to strike, but we do want to, obviously support the programming that the city does have, while also kind of balancing the needs for information by the people that do live there. Excuse me if I didn't get to all of your questions.
No,
I am
you
happy
did.
to. Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm going to go ahead and I see Allison, you have your hand up. Would you come off mute, please?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Max, and thank you, Uma, for their presentation. I do have a bunch of questions, so I probably will have to hold some of them because there are quite a number of people here, and I don't think you told us yet what the budget is for the project. So if someone could share that at some point. And I wanted to follow up on Louisa's question about interaction with the school because the school community obviously has playgrounds, but they do use this field and both for after school and during school. And so thinking about how classes come into the site, I think is important. And certainly the entry at the lower right from the parking lot and the sidewalk with Grotto Glen is the entrance I have seen most used by the school, but also from coming out of the gymnasium and the pathway down to the fields. So I think those entry points are super important. The other entry plaza, of course, is very nice because it's the entrance to Naira Rock and it has signs and so on. But we really need a focus on those other entry points that makes them seem as welcoming as the people who drive in and park at the circle and so on and come into the park that way. I think it's so I don't know if you have heard from the school about their use of the fields and what they think about that. I think that's important. Um, and I I will hold some points, but my most important question is about this concept of paving the pathway from Heath to Grotto Glen. I definitely heard at the first meeting conversations about improving it and making it accessible so that there's not that drop in grade both at by the gymnasium and then the puddles that are over by the Grotto Glen entrance. But I did not hear discussions about pavement. So maybe you got that from survey responses, but frankly, I would be a little concerned about pavement and how that's going to interact with the ball field and whether that there's going to be more water issues because of that. I know at other parks they use stone dust, they use permeable pavements for walking paths. So I think, regrading the path was super important, but and making it accessible for people who are walking their bikes down from Heath to go over to Day Street. But I did not hear something about pavement. So if you could answer that question about where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So specifically on the pavement, I recall part of that, you're right, it has to do with access and the ability to kind of move about that freely. That also has to do with kind of updating existing paths to our current standards. Most of the pathways that we put in parks now are bituminous asphalt. And so that would probably be something we were looking at introducing if we were to formalize that path. I do recall, and I don't see any of my Reagan youth contacts on this call, but and I will defer to them if, oh, is that you, Nolan? I had thought there was something about a warning track or that being kind of a possible idea or treating that as such. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I do believe we had heard that as from okay, thanks, Nolan. I do believe we had heard that as sort of something that the baseball playing community here would be on board with. I'm happy to kind of fact check that and get back to you on that. But that was kind of our reasoning for looking at that as an option. Let's see. You are on mute. Hang on, Allison. Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry. I'll try to be really fast, but just to go to my point about your interaction with the Hennigan School and how they enter and leave the park field, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I think kind of Uma started to show that with they're kind of the primary drivers of this sort of soccer field or like kind of multi-use painting space in the outfield. And that was kind of one of the criteria we were using in terms of weighing the pros and cons about each layout. One of those was kind of proximity to the school entrance. So that was kind of part of the thinking It's certainly not, we haven't finalized kind of a space or if this is worth pursuing, but that was something that we had considered. And especially in that first comparison, the idea of kind of making that connection out of the school over to the play area and basketball court a little more direct, rather than needing to either cut straight across the baseball field or, take a pretty circuitous route to get there otherwise. So I hope that
Okay.
answers your question for the time being. I do want to
Okay.
say I want to get to let's see, Eric, you have your hand up. I want to get to you next. I do just want to say, Kenneth, that I'm going to try to get to you next. If we're not able to get you off mute, please feel free to type your question or comment in the chat or send me an email. We will get a response to whatever it is you have to say. So right now I'm going to ask Eric to come off mute, please.
Hey, yeah, Eric Harrod. I live over on Gayhead and Edge Hill. I guess I'm just curious to what extent you have the ability to move things like the fence between the Hennigan and the ball field, because I was one of the ones that brought up the path, and paving it would certainly be a game changer for us, and I think really make things like walking through it with a stroller or walking a bike up it easier. But yeah, I'm very sensitive to the fact that I don't think I'd want to make that ask if it meant that it would basically make the ball field kind of substandard, if you will. So I am curious how much capacity you have to move the fence there, seeing as it does seem like that section of the property of the Hennigan is not exactly useful as public space for them.
Um, Thank you for that. And good of you to mention this. So that area is kind of a shared, well, not shared, but we do abut the property line of BPS school, Boston Public School. So we have to work together kind of on memoriams of understanding, kind of engaging in work where that can be made. I do believe the fence line is on BPS property, so that is something we would need to kind of explore with them and get their kind of agreement and interest in before we could pursue anything like that. So again, we haven't quite gotten to the stage of fully engaging with BPS and kind of figuring out what our asks are going to be exactly. But that is kind of involved in the next step of things. So if that I don't think we had really looked at adjusting that fence line, but if that is something that we hear from the community and BPS would be amenable to, is something we could consider exploring.
May I just add something, Max, here?
Yes, you do.
The plan as it's currently does not impact that fence line. The intent is to keep it in its current location. We are, especially in concept one, if you look at it a little bit closely, it's hard to tell, is moving the path as a paved path a little bit closer to the fence line. So it's actually interfering even less with the baseball field. So, yeah. And as you see, maybe when you go online and look at the concepts, you'll be able to see it even clearer.
Thanks, Uma. Let's see. Kenneth, thank you for entering that. I'm going to call on Nolan here. I see you have your hand up. Nolan, could you please come off mute?
Great. Thanks a lot, Max. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, so I'm Nolan Green. I live on Gayhead Street, right next to Eric, my good friend and neighbor. Thanks a lot for you and Uma and everyone involved in kind of the thoughtful designs here. I really appreciate it. I think there are a lot of things in the first design that you shared that really resonate with me, particularly the perimeter pathway, creating a walking area across the entire perimeter of the field, trying to create more of a welcome area kind of in the area next to the backstop, just trying to give the park a more cohesive layout more generally. I think the one thing I just suggest trying to think a little bit more about is to consider how people might use the park when they're not there explicitly for baseball or basketball. Baseball, it is a purpose-built park for baseball. There's obviously a baseball field there, but the majority of the days there isn't a baseball game. And on the majority of the days that there is a baseball game, the majority of the time, people aren't playing baseball there. So would just love to kind of think more about diversified uses of the space, about even if the space is built primarily for one thing, what are potential secondary uses. So really love kind of the thoughtfulness around the soccer field, or thinking about how to use the outfield when baseball isn't there. I would also just try to suggest like thinking about if there are opportunities to design sort of features or spaces for more passive enjoyment, for just and you know, enjoying the nature of the park, just sitting there with other people, with friends, with family and community, to kind of think about if you were just to spend some time there and you weren't there for baseball or basketball, what might you do? What might you look at? I think it'd be a shame if all of the seating that we expanded was just for the sole purpose of spectators watching baseball and watching basketball, and there wasn't, you know, seating or a place for people to kind of just congregate and be with each other and enjoy the outdoor space. Um, I'd also just like to say I really agree with some of the other comments about trying to think about, you know, including folks at BCYF or the Hennigan, and also just thinking about how the space itself flows from those other connecting points. You know, the park isn't, as you've alluded to, just an isolated community resource. It's really a kind of a connective gateway from Mirror Rock up to Heath Street, from Heath Street into the urban wild. And I think particularly thinking about how the, you know, the entryway that you're thinking about designing is an entryway not just to the park, but an entryway into Mirror Rock as well, because I think it'll inevitably serve both of those purposes. So just wanted to share my thoughts. And again, thank you for all the hard work that you put into this.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Nolan. I'd like to give our designers a chance to speak to this, but I'd just like to say off the top that one of kind of the first impressions we had when we got out on site was, you know, a lot of this park. You're right to point out there is a very large programmed area for baseball, and there are very few fields of this size in the city of Boston's inventory. But that doesn't mean the rest of the park should feel like an afterthought. And you know, we want this space to feel like more than just, you know, what happens when the older sibling has a baseball game and the younger sibling has to come along. We want this to feel like a destination for not only ball players but people in the neighborhood, people at the school. Just kind of, yeah, know that this is a treasure. I think it's a fantastic park, especially with its kind of connection to Niagara Rock and its really beautiful geology. I just think it's a really special place. So thank you for that. Uma, would you like to share anything?
And on that point also, Max, you know, I know I didn't really talk about it, but really the loop walk itself around the site. I know in the first concept we show maybe trees, but you know, we are thinking once we decide on the concept is possibly, you know, having seating along that loop walk, a little picnic areas and so on. So that'll all be part of the design as we develop it. So thank you so much for that comment. Max, are you on mute?
Yeah, being too considerate. I'm going to give Louisa a chance to speak here. Louisa, would you go ahead and come off mute?
Yes, just one quick suggestion about, and I understand Allison's point about trying to be more considerate in a certain way, non-asphalt. I don't know, whatever you guys can do. I think it's important to have a paved one instead of the dirt that's there now. Also because there are kids that are on wheelchairs that could access from the parking lot the not only the park but even the BCYF facility. So they can come from above, but it could also come from below. So, and I mean, kids and adults as well. So I think it's important to have some kind of path, like I think Eric was saying, for strollers, but above all for, you know, to make it accessible. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Um, Yeah, so kind of one of the things I brought up kind of at the top of the meeting were those kind of that bubble diagram of the things that we use to kind of inform some of our design decisions. Um, Two of those things I mentioned, the Americans with Disabilities Act and the cities of Boston's goal of increasing access, both kind of go hand in hand with that idea of creating pathways that are accessible, not only for like a variety of modalities. Um, and I think that too is probably why you'll see more of our standard pathways are bituminous asphalt, the smooth surface that um, people in wheelchairs or on different mobility devices can use more easily than, say, crushed stone, stone dust paths. Um, let's see, Allison, would you like to come off mute here?
Yes, hi, thank you. Yeah, that's a good point about kids in wheelchairs or adults for that matter too. Um, I didn't hear an answer yet about my question about the budget. So if
Yes.
one of you can share that. And related to the playground and the two concepts, I do you think you have to keep in mind, as someone said, that a family might have siblings playing a game, and then other siblings are want to use the play equipment, or someone is watching basketball and someone else wants to keep track of a kid that's on a swing. So sight lines between those different areas are pretty important. And then I didn't hear a mention of the dugout benches and if they're getting relocated in both schemes. I think in the retained scheme, definitely having tiered seating is better for visibility versus a linear bench, which then puts you at a lower level for seeing the action. But yes, that's my question about the budget. Thinking about when you have to do value engineering and what is going to be a priority for everything. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me of that. I was just about to respond. So the kind of key thing about the budget for this project right now is it is not fully finalized. What we're waiting on is we need to do some kind of nitty gritty additional geotechnical testing to understand the soil composition better. That's necessary for the installation of new field lighting. And kind of once we have a better sense of what we're working with, we'll then be able to kind of make a more reasonable projection of what that construction budget will be. So I'm sorry I don't have kind of a more concrete answer for you yet. We are in the design team and I are presently pursuing getting someone out there to do that geotechnical testing work as soon as possible. So I will kind of provide an update with on that probably at our next meeting. I think that will probably have a better sense of kind of where we are at with things. And I think too, in regards to your question about seating, that was something the design team and I were kind of conversing about before this meeting. It's something we don't have totally ironed out, but is a question we kind of want to ask you. I'm planning on including that as a survey question, so please do look forward to that in the next few days. Um, I'm going to give the floor over to Lisa one last time, and then I think we're going to shift to kind of our closing remarks. So, Lisa, you have the floor.
Thank you. Sorry, one quick question about you guys haven't mentioned, so I just want to point it out. I did point it out last time too. So in between the okay, from the field, if you look at the BCYF, the pool and so forth building, right? To the left-hand side, there is a very narrow path where people used to throw garbage like crazy. It's fortunately, at least lately, I don't know, I haven't been there lately. So, but nevertheless, are you guys considering it? You've forgotten? It's not mentioned at all here, so I don't know what you can do with it. So
We are going to end up ultimately talking to the school and figuring out kind of what they need in terms of access back there. But kind of the placeholder you can see in both of these concepts is we think there's a way to kind of block that off either through vegetation or some kind of programming. But I just want to assure you that has not fallen off our radar.
Right.
It's just a little hard to kind of represent that at this scale right now. So thank you for bringing that up. It has not fallen off. Okay, I think with that, Karina, would you mind going to the next slide? I think yes, we don't have much to share quite yet. We'll be getting the survey together here in the next few days, and I have everyone here, I believe, is on our email list. So be watching for an email from me in the next, probably early next week, about the survey and kind of access to meeting materials. If you need anything or want to express anything or converse further with me in the meantime, my email is there at the bottom, max.cell@boston.gov. And I just want to thank you all again so much for joining us tonight and for taking the time to be here. And yeah, just really can't wait to keep moving this project forward with you all. Thanks again for coming, everyone. The design team and I will stay on the call here for a bit, but that concludes our presentation for the night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.